Before we get well and truly stuck into this, guys, let's actually have a bit of a think about what health is. In fact, I'm going to remind you of what health is. Here we go. You've probably looked at this definition before. If you haven't, familiarise, please. We are talking about health being a state of complete emotional, psychological, and physical. Sorry, let me restate that. Health is a state of complete emotional, psychological, they're alternative terms, physical and social well-being. So what are we looking at here? We're looking at groups of benefits that are emotional, psychological, are physical, and are social. So let's see if we can break down what those benefits are. And I want to be clear here. I am now talking about health benefits from regular participation in exercise. Remember that exercise notion that we had previously? We defined exercise as an activity that needs physical effort. If we do that, how is this going to benefit our health? So let me take my sort of blue area here, our emotional, psychological, and let's actually see if we can note down what some of these benefits would actually be from regular participation. Remember, by the way, regular participation would be a minimum for children of 7 times 60 minutes per week, and for adults of 5 times 30 minutes per week. But what are the psychological benefits? Well, first of all, people feel good when they exercise. I'm going to define it as a feel-good factor. You will, I'm confident, have experienced this. Now, one of the examples of something that might cause that is serotonin. Serotonin increases that sort of feel-good factor, that positive vibe in the mind. This chemical, this neurochemical, will make you feel well, happy, and satisfied after you've participated in activity. Another point which is interesting is that people experience stress relief from regular movement. I'm sure, again, you've probably experienced this. A lovely word you can introduce to your writing if you want to is catharsis. Catharsis is literally stress relieving or stress relief. You can include that if you like. We've mentioned examples of endorphins already, so let's actually write that in here. Those neurochemicals that help us to feel good, serotonin being an example. And regular participation can up-arrow boost self-esteem. So someone can increase their self-worth and self-reflection. That in turn increases a person's confidence. Now, we're not going to get into distinctions between global confidence and self-efficacy here, but confidence, let's use it as a general term, will increase. People also enjoy movement. Remember that is a psychological or emotional benefit. You're doing the thing that you like to do, and it makes you feel good. That's a positive thing. And finally, guys, I've got 2 points to make to you on the psychological, emotional side. People really enjoy, not always in life, but often, a personal challenge. I don't know, for example, whether you'll ever choose to do something like run a half marathon or a marathon as an example, or climb a big mountain, or you might do a triathlon. These are things that you can really push yourself over. I've done a few of these things in my life. I'd actually like to do more, but you get this sense of achievement. It gives you this notion of self-realization, who you are as a person and what you're capable of. It's very good for people, assuming we don't keel over in the process, of course. And then finally, guys, I want to mention to you aesthetic appreciation. Now, in some ways, this will feel one of the more challenging points to appreciation. It will feel like one of the more challenging points to grasp. But one of the things we experience when we're participating regularly in sport is that an activity of that matter, is that we enjoy like the beauty of movement. We get appreciation from that. We see things, we experience things, we might even feel the correct movement, and that we appreciate, and that sort of beauty is known as aesthetics, or the aesthetic appreciation. So we have these health benefits that are emotional, psychological. Fine. We had in orange another group that are physical. Let's put them up here. We have certain physical benefits from regular participation. Remember, 7 times 60 minutes for children, 5 times 30 minutes per week for adults. So what would we anticipate as benefits on the physical side? Well, there's no question the individual is going to have up arrow an increase in cardiovascular fitness. Now, I'm not going to go through all of the adaptations, but basically, aerobically, we become healthier. Let's also stress here that we get decreased risk of conditions such as coronary heart disease or CHD. Think about conditions like angina, for example. An individual might have a lower down arrow tendency towards something like a stroke. There are different types of strokes, but if I just generalize them into a blockage of blood flow to the brain, this becomes less and less likely with activity. It still happen, but it becomes less and less likely because the individual is sort of cleansing all the time that circuitry network, and that's a really positive thing. We also, as performers, we might experience bradycardia. Okay, bradycardia. Let me just make sure I'll put that in sort of quotes there. Bradycardia. This is what we would refer to as a low resting heart rate. Now, I'm not going to get into all of the cardiac output equals stroke volume times heart rate stuff, but we already know that if we strengthen the left ventricle of the heart, it ejects more blood per contraction. Therefore, the number of heartbeats per minute at rest reduces. That we can call that bradycardia. And just to be clear, bradycardia is when it's less than 60 beats per minute, okay? Which is kind of like a performance level, not just a health level. We also get an improvement, that's what that up arrow represents, in body composition. Remember, this is about the ratio of lean body tissue, muscle for example, to fat tissue. It improves as a physical benefit. We have down arrow a decreased likelihood of type 2 diabetes. I was talking to someone this morning on my way to work who's recently been diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, and he was saying to me how much is challenging him. This is lifestyle diabetes because someone, amongst other things, has not exercised enough, and it requires a lifelong medication, so it's worth avoiding. But we'd also have up arrow an increase in strength. Getting into these components of fitness right now, we'd have an increase in what I'm going to refer to as ME, muscular endurance, that sort of repeated contraction. We'd have a decreased tendency for osteoporosis. If you're unsure what osteoporosis is, I'm going to briefly describe it as brittle bones here, but it's prevented through regular exercise because we lay down calcium deposits on the bone and the bone matrix strengthens. Therefore, we tend to get osteoporosis less. And final 2 points on the physical side, guys, we have a better immune system, which of course is really positive, not least when there are nasty viruses around. I record this during the COVID crisis, so it's kind of an interesting thing to say. And we have a decreased tendency towards illness. Okay, so lots of physical benefits. Let's finish off with our social. Okay, so we mentioned in red up here that we also have social benefits to well-being, so let's go through some of those. We are talking here generically about increased social health. Now let's see if we can better define what that might mean, perhaps. So for me, people become more cooperative. Okay, now this comes a lot from things like team sports, for example, but also just be a club-based environment. I think it's really important to stress there about the development and the maintenance of good friendships. Some of my best friendships I've ever had have come solely out of sports teams, for example. But cooperation also leads to lifelong skills like teamwork. Whatever job you do in your life, it's quite likely to involve teams, even small teams. And finally, guys, we've got the notion that participation can lead to good attitude for competition. Okay, so let me just stretch out over here. Good attitude for competition. What do we mean by that? That someone takes the experience of winning and losing well. Okay, their competitive orientation, we would call it in sports psychology, is positive. They tend to judge themselves not just emotionally by whether they win or lose, but about how they performed, and also that losing can be a benefit to them. And that's an example of social well-being and a health benefit. This is what we think are the reasons why people should participate regularly. 7 times 60 minutes for children per week, 5 times 30 minutes for adults. Thanks.